Hello everyone, it's 5:25. We'll get started by 5:30. Please be patient. All right, hey there, hello everyone. Seemingly, we have a little bit of a limited fallout today. Close to 30 people are in the house. It's 5:31. Hopefully, they'll join us soon. Before we get started, as I told you today, we'll deal with the criticisms on Hamlet. Before we get started, maybe we'll spend another 3 4 minutes. I generally one thing I liked about your batch, just like the batch I handled a little while ago with MEG 5 in the second year, is that most of you do keep mailing me regarding your queries. So, as long as that's subject related, I really find it quite encouraging as far as when I come to take class for you. The fact that you have doubts or the fact that you have problematizing standpoints regarding certain things that we discuss is in itself something that motivates me to come back to you. So, if you remember on day one or day two, perhaps to be precise, I had told you about the origin and evolution of drama. So while saying that, I told you that it originated as a ritualistic art form, and in Greece they were supposed to perform plays, three tragedies and one comedy. So I also gave a list of the playwrights who were popular back then, and I had told you that Aristophanes is regarded as uh, the comic playwright in Greece. He didn't achieve much success in terms of getting rewarded, but his plays are remembered for the subtle irony that was there, or satirical nature. So there were a couple of people who had mailed me asking, can I find some time to elaborate on Aristophanes? You don't have Aristophanes prescribed for your study, and I don't think there is any other space where you would get to know about Greek plays either. So I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on Aristophanes, and hopefully by then our regular students would join, and then we'll get started with Hamlet. There are a lot of people sneaking in between. So I'd just like to share my screen and show a small video, again made by um, TED. Uh, I hope that video would give you quite a good insight into Aristophanes and his life. So just a second, I'm going to share my screen again and show you that video, and we'll get back once this is over.
At the annual Athenian Drama Festival in 426 BC, a comic play called The Babylonians, written by a young poet named Aristophanes, was awarded first prize. But the play's depiction of Athens' conduct during the Peloponnesian War was so controversial that afterwards a politician named Cleon took Aristophanes to court for slandering the people of Athens in the presence of foreigners. Aristophanes struck back 2 years later with a play called The Knights. In it, he openly mocked Cleon, ending with Cleon's character working as a lowly sausage seller outside the city gates. This style of satire was a consequence of the unrestricted democracy of 5th century Athens and is now called Old Comedy. Aristophanes' plays, the world's earliest surviving comic dramas, are stuffed full of parodies, songs, sexual jokes, and surreal fantasy. They often use wild situations, like a hero flying to heaven on a dung beetle, or a net cast over a house to keep the owner's father trapped inside, in order to subvert audience expectations. And they've shaped how comedy's been written and performed ever since. The word comedy comes from the ancient Greek komos, revel, and oid, singing, and it differed from its companion art form, tragedy, in many ways. Where ancient Athenian tragedies dealt with the downfall of the high and mighty, their comedies usually ended happily. And where tragedy almost always borrowed stories from legend, comedy addressed current events. Aristophanes' comedies celebrated ordinary people and attacked the powerful. His targets were arrogant politicians, war-mongering generals, and self-important intellectuals. Exactly the people who sat in the front row of the theatre where everyone could see their reactions. As a result, they were referred to as komodoumenoi, those made fun of in comedy. Aristophanes' vicious and often obscene mockery held these leaders to account, testing their commitment to the city. One issue in particular inspired much of Aristophanes' work, the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. In Peace, written in 421 BC, a middle-aged Athenian frees the embodiment of peace from a cave where she'd been exiled by profiteering politicians. Then, in the aftermath of a crushing naval defeat for Athens in 411 BC, Aristophanes wrote Lysistrata. In this play, the women of Athens grow sick of war and go on a sex strike until their husbands make peace. Other plays use similarly fantastic scenarios to skewer topical situations, such as in Clouds, where Aristophanes mocked fashionable philosophical thinking. The hero, Strepsiades, enrolls in Socrates' new philosophical school, where he learns how to prove that wrong is right and that a debt is not a debt. No matter how outlandish these plays get, the heroes always prevail in the end. Aristophanes also became the master of the parabasis, a comic technique where actors address the audience directly, often praising the playwright or making topical comments and jokes. For example, in Birds, the chorus takes the role of different birds and threatens the Athenian judges that if their play doesn't win first prize, they'll defecate on them as they walk around the city. Perhaps the judges didn't appreciate the joke, as the play came in second. By exploring new ideas and encouraging self-criticism in Athenian society, Aristophanes not only mocked his fellow citizens, but he shaped the nature of comedy itself. Hailed by some scholars as the father of comedy, his fingerprints are visible upon comic techniques everywhere, from slapstick to double acts, to impersonations to political satire. Through the praise of free speech and the celebration of ordinary heroes, his plays made his audience think while they laughed, and his retort to Cleon in 425 BC still resonates today. I'm a comedian, so I'll speak about justice, no matter how hard it sounds to your ears. Did you know that TED-Ed has a student voice program?
All right, we've got close to 70 people in the house. I think it's good enough for us to get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another session on MEG 2. We were discussing Hamlet yesterday. We had an overview of what happens in the play. Stuck. Right, I'm sorry, there was some technical issue from my side, and that's why there was a minimal pause. So, hello everybody, and before we get started today, let me just inform you that there is heavy torrential rain outside my residence. So there is a possibility that at times there would be network fluctuations, which means I may be on and off. I need not, or I don't want to do that, but then just in case there is a technical issue, I'll be on and off. So please don't go away, be there. Just in case I get kicked out, I'll come back in say 3 to 5 minutes. So please be patient, wait for me to come back and join the batch. All right, so let's get started. And as we get started today, yesterday we had discussed Hamlet, and today I had promised you that we'll discuss the theoretical or critical interpretations of Hamlet. So before we venture out to do so, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes giving you references as to the sort of books that you can depend on. In general, a couple of days ago, I had spoken to you about illustrative classics. I had shown you the manga edition, for instance. So I was also receiving a lot of mails as to where to get them. I had given the instance of the Ernakulam Public Library, for instance, and I had told you about the HNC publications. So again, I'm not sure about the North Indian equivalents, but I guess there would be equivalents to this in North India as well. They may have their own publications coming up with books like these for students, especially children of young age. So for those, especially Malayalis, I'd like to share a few books with you. Uh, these are elementary books, and I keep telling this. I'm not like a traditional regular English teacher. There are people who are quite rigid about language and literature. But I personally feel that as long as what matters for me is primarily you must be able to understand the topic. So for that, whatever you do, I'm okay with that. So if you think you need to read a picture book, well enough is my perception. There may be people who would say that you should still write what do you call it, very pure English. That's not my cup, nonetheless. So I'd like to share a few books with you. Uh, for example, this is a book published by HNC on King Lear. This is a Malayalam book, so I don't think the North Indians would have anything to do. If you can see, there are pictures, there are sketches, and this book is kind of a summarized version of that play, like in a storytelling way. Similarly, there is this these other books. Again, this is another publisher on King Lear. Yeah. Again, you have a color pick illustrated. Yeah. So you get to know what happens in the play. This is called Sujitra Classic. I mean, Ernakulamites would know. Alua Manappurthokke സ്ഥിരം ഇങ്ങനത്തെ book stalls ഉണ്ടാവാറ്. This is Shakespeare's Othello. Again, in the same pictorial way. There is a pictorial depiction. There are a lot of things written, and it helps in easier understanding, even though it is in Malayalam. This is The Tempest, William Shakespeare's somewhat last of the plays, full of images, simplified language. At least you get to know the stories better. No guesses to this. This is Hamlet, Malayalam version by HNC. And you will have to pardon the translation problems. For example, to be or not to be, that is the question. It's how one soliloquy begins. And this book translated as Venamo Vendayo. Adani ivide chodyam uyarthunnu, which is kind of hilarious when I read that. But nonetheless, yeah, Hamlet in a similar way. Again, just 20 rupees. That's what they have priced this at. A couple of years ago, it was 10. Maybe publication costs accounts to it. This is Macbeth, again by HNP. Yeah, they are abridged versions, Jennifer. That's a better word. Abridged, clandestine versions. Yep. But you can see the pictorial depictions here. It makes a easier understanding of what you're trying to read. Similarly, Julius Caesar. There are 3 editions of Caesar with me. If you can see, this is one edition of Julius Caesar by HNC. This is another edition, and this is another. 3 different layouts, 3 different printing styles. Pictorial depictions are different. But again, all by HNC. Again, Robinson Crusoe. Of course, you don't have to study this, but then. And this is the book that I referred to the other day, Greek Purana Kadagal by HNC. Again, 20 rupees is what it's priced at. Maybe it's 30 now. I don't know. But this is a wonderful book compiled by George Imatti. I'm sure you would be familiar with George Imatti. So he has compiled this book. It has a complete list of the Greek mythology. Plenty of stories like Medusa's tale, Perseus' tale, then Zeus, the story of Zeus, then Hercules, Helen, Orpheus and Eurydice, Cadmus, and so on and on. There are plenty of close to 105-page long tales of Greek mythology. So maybe you can refer to this as well. So these are some subtle suggestions that I have for you. For North Indians, I'm sure you'll have some similar abridged publisher in Hindi who would have been trying to do the same. So you may venture out on that path as well. That will help you understand the subject better. It's not about Hamlet. They have plenty of works prescribed for you published in the abridged format. So you may refer to that. But yes, make sure you double check for the particulars. There might be some blemishes here and there. So it's up to you to validate whatever is being said in that kind of books. And because it's COVID, there is no point in telling you where all you would find stalls of this. But then for Malayalis out there, പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് എറണാകുളത്ത് താമസിക്കുന്നവരോട് കോവിഡ് ഒക്കെ മാറി കടയൊക്കെ തുറക്കുവാണെങ്കിൽ വീണ്ടും അവർ ആ കട അവിടെ തന്നെ ഇടുവാണെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് പോവാവുന്ന 2-3 കടകളാണ്. ഒന്ന് തോപ്പുംപടിയിൽ ഒരു KR ബേക്കറിയും അതിന്റെ തൊട്ടടുത്ത് ഒരു ബാറും ഉണ്ട്, തോപ്പുംപടി ബസ് സ്റ്റോപ്പിൽ തന്നെ. അപ്പൊ ആ KR ബേക്കറിക്കും ബാറിനും ഇടയിൽ ഒരു കടയുണ്ട്. അത് HNCയുടെ ഔട്ട്ലെറ്റ് ആണ്. You can buy these books for 10 or 20 rupees from that HNC outlet. Similarly, ആലുവ ബൈപ്പാസിൽ നിങ്ങൾ ആലുവ ബാങ്ക് ജംഗ്ഷൻ ഇറങ്ങുവാണെങ്കിൽ ആലുവ ബാങ്ക് ജംഗ്ഷനിൽ ബസ് ഇറങ്ങുന്ന സ്ഥലത്ത് തന്നെ യു ഹാവ് എ ബുക്ക് സ്റ്റോർ, ഈ 50-60% ഓഫ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് അവിടെയും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇത്തരം ബുക്കുകൾ കിട്ടും. സിമിലർലി കലൂർ ബസ് സ്റ്റാൻഡിൽ 2-3 ഔട്ട്ലെറ്റ്സ് ഉണ്ട്, മേനകയുണ്ട്. So these are some places you can look forward to. HNC store is there in Palarvattam too. Thank you, Divya. That's a good suggestion right now. So അതൊക്കെ പക്ഷെ ഇപ്പൊ ക്ലോസ്ഡ് ആയിരിക്കും ലോക്ക്ഡൌൺ ആയതുകൊണ്ട്. ബട്ട് മേ ബി വൺസ് ദ ലോക്ക്ഡൌൺ ഇസ് ഓവർ. കോട്ടയത്തും ഉണ്ടാവണം. കോട്ടയത്ത് നിങ്ങളുടെ ആ ബസ് സ്റ്റാൻഡിന്റെ ഒക്കെ ഓപ്പോസിറ്റ്, ആ റെയിൽവേ സ്റ്റേഷന്റെ ഒക്കെ അടുത്ത് അവിടെ അവരുള്ളതാണ്. HNCയുടെ ഔട്ട്ലെറ്റ്സ് എവിടെയാണെന്നുള്ളത് എനിക്ക് കൃത്യമായിട്ട് അറിയില്ല, ഒന്ന് ഗൂഗിൾ ചെയ്ത് നോക്കും. ബട്ട് ഐ എം ഷുവർ ഡെഫിനറ്റ്ലി ദർ ആർ പ്ലെന്റി ഓഫ് ഔട്ട്ലെറ്റ്സ് ഫോർ HNC across the state. So you may go to those stores and get these books. It doesn't cost you much, and you get to know the story. That's the best part about it. നമ്മളെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം നമുക്ക്, especially when it comes to MEG 2 and 3, if you know the story, you know how to cook up the entire thing. So if you have a question for the exam, you know how to answer it if you know the story. If you don't know the story, then that becomes a bit problematic. So these books would help you in understanding and appreciating the plot, to say the least. And it's not about Cochin and Kottayam alone. Even in Trivandrum, Thrissur, Kollam, these things would be there. Thrissuriലെ ശക്തൻ സ്റ്റാൻഡിന്റെ അടുത്തൊക്കെ book outlets ഉണ്ടെന്നാണ് എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഓർമ്മ. But then I'm not so sure. You need to figure it out once the lockdown subdues. All right. And another couple of references I have for you before we begin our class today is, if you can, if you want to, if you're interested in this guy, buy this book. This is available in Flipkart and Amazon. This is a short story collection by Salman Rushdie. The short story collection is titled East, West. It's an exemplary work, and unlike his novels, his short stories are a bit more readable, in my opinion. His language is a bit more subtle. And the reason why I recommend this book to you is, there are 2 stories in particular. There are definitely different stories that you may or may not like. But then there are 2 stories that I believe you would like a lot, among the lot. One is the story titled The Free Radio. The Free Radio is a satirical take on the policies of our former Prime Minister, Srimati Indira Gandhi, regarding compulsory vasectomy. ഈ നിർബന്ധിത വന്ധ്യംകരണം, പോപ്പുലേഷൻ കൺട്രോൾ എന്നുള്ളതിൽ ഇന്ദിരാഗാന്ധിയുടെ പോളിസീസിനെതിരെയുള്ള ഒരു satirical storyയാണ് The Free Radio. You may also read O.V. Vijayan's Brunam, which is a similar take on Indira Gandhi's policies. There is also a controversial story in that book titled The Prophet's Hair. You all know the sort of furor attached with the Prophet's hair, Nabi's hair. So that's one story. And there is also another interesting story called Yorick, Yorick. I guess you understood why I suggest this book now. I'll speak about Yorick a little while later, don't worry. While speaking about various interpretations of Hamlet, I'll definitely talk to you about the story Yorick by Salman Rushdie. So before moving on, there is one more book I'd like to suggest to you. I'm not sure to what extent this book, just a second, let me just check that. There's a book that I'd like to suggest to you, but I'm not sure to what extent it's available. No, it's not available online. I'll give you the contact detail of the person. Just a second. Mm, Contacts. All right. I'm sharing a number with you. I'll tell you why. 9895884379. All right. I've shared a number with you. And the reason why I've shared that number with you is that's the number of Dr. Appu Jacob John. Dr. Appu was formerly the head Department of English in St. Albert's College. Then he worked for a couple of years in CMS College, Kottayam. And over the last 6 months, he's working as an associate professor in the Karyavattam campus, University of Kerala, what is called as, or what is popular as the Institute of English. So he is one of the well-known figures, academicians in Kerala. So while he was the head in St. Albert's College, he brought out an entire journal on Hamlet. And the journal is titled Hamlets for Harris. If you can see this, this is not available online. This is a special edition on Hamlet. And it's a tribute to Dr. V.C. Harris, who is one of the greatest teachers that we've ever met. So, as a tribute to Harris, he brought out Hamlets for Harris. And the best part about this book is that there are articles on Hamlet, expert articles on Hamlet, written by the stalwart academicians in Kerala. Those who are Malayalis might have heard these names, to say the least. Cherry Jacob K., former head Department of English, UC College, Aluva. Dr. V.C. Harris, who's no longer with us, was the head of School of Letters, Kottayam, MG University. Taro Aizu, who is a Japanese poet. Dr. Ravindra Rensinha from Delhi University. Professor C.S. Jairam, who was Department of English, Sacred Heart College, Tevra. Currently, he's associated with the Amrita Vidyalaya University, Edapalli. Then we have Professor T.M. Yeshudasan, the popular Dalit critic, Dr. K. Jeevan Kumar, Josie Joseph, SB College, Changanasheri, Colby Davis, again School of Letters, Kottayam, Akhilesh Udayabanu from Kaladi University, Adib Hussain from Hyderabad Central University, myself, then there is this Anthony Jose, Bibin Thomas, Marjan AU again from Hyderabad Central University, Dr. Appu Jacob himself, and Shari Jacob. So there are plenty of almost 25 essays on the various facets of Hamlet. If you could see the course catalog, it is almost close to a 200-page long book entirely on Hamlet. So just in case you want to go through these, you may contact Dr. Appu John, and the name of the book is Hamlets for Harris. It's a special edition. It's actually Albertian Journal, published in the year July 2018. But then that was a special edition focused on the theme of Harris. Do you mean the ISBN number, Satyendra? The number is ISSN.
Index list of essays, the pick of list of essays.
Oh my God, I
one
think
by
I'll
one.
have to. Oh, that's a bit difficult. It's simple. There is a preface. There's an essay by Dr. V.C. Harris titled Amanuensis with the play Hamlet, how to begin, where to begin, and so and so. And that's a really provocative essay. How to begin, where to begin, and so and so. This is a style that Harris Marsh had. Then there is this Amanuensis 2, which was the book Hamlet was reading. Text as Spectre by Shari Jacob K. Then you have Haiku Hamlet from Taro Aizu, Rebuilding Identity in Hamlet by Dr. Ravindra Rensinha from Sri Lanka. And you have Painting an Inch Thick, The Spectacle and Spectrality of Ophelia by Professor C.S. Jairam. The Frame of Delacroix's Hamlet by T.M. Yeshudasan. Echoing Hamlet, The Hamlet Machine and the Guilty Creatures at Play by Dr. Jeevan Kumar. Fathers and Their Uncanny Ghosts, Spectres of Hamlet in Freud, Lacan, and Derrida by Josie Joseph. Will's Cat and Dog, Dog's Hamlet by Colby Davis. Deadly Demonetization, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Not Dead by Akhilesh Udayabanu. Hamlet, Conviction, Crisis and Certainty by Adib Hussain. Margaret Clark's Gertrude and Ophelia, Gender Bending Hamlet by Meenu. Yorick Skull, Anonymity, Shakespeare, Hamlet, Rushdie by Anthony Jose. Hamlet's Karma in a Nutshell, rereading two retellings by Bibin Thomas. Then you have film reviews, that's Hamlet's adaptations, reviews, a few of them. There is a book review of Ian McEwan's Nutshell by Dr. Apu Jacob John. And What Left to Say About Hamlet, a certain Heido speak on adaptation and pedagogy. So these are some essays, and my essay deals with is Polonius the protagonist of the play? That's a different take on Hamlet. Of course, we all know that Polonius is definitely not the protagonist, but based on some empirical evidences, I simply try to argue that Polonius is the protagonist of the play. Nonetheless, if you want to, you may go back and have a look at that book. Let's get started. Again, it took me 28 minutes to get started. The Hamletians that we are. All right, doesn't matter. Let's get started. So yesterday, while discussing Hamlet, you may have got a new way or new perspective to look at the play. You might have understood that Hamlet is a teenager, just like you, and at your age, you are supposed to behave the same way like Hamlet does, or maybe much more vulnerable than he is. And secondly, his procrastination or inaction accounts mostly to what has happened about his hopes and its reality. As I had told you yesterday, the play would have ideally began when he was traveling back from Wittenberg to Denmark, and he would have had certain dilemmas in his mind, and somehow all those were thwarted by Claudius assuming power, and because of that, Hamlet, in a way, either became mad or he feigned his madness, also accounted to his sluggishness or indecision in making an action, and so on and on and on. So today we'll be coming through of getting familiar with certain critical editions. We'll also be coming with certain theoretical viewpoints. So we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Let me just get these files open. Just give me a second. We'll get started. All right, so let's get started. The files are now then open here in my desktop. I shall share it to you once our lecture is over today. As usual, I'll mail it to you in your email IDs, respective email IDs. I have mailed all those who were there in my class yesterday, and I assume that you have read it, and I mean you have received it. Just in case someone has not received my mail, you may feel free to write to me. I shall reply you with the same. All right, so let's get started. And as we get started with, I'm going to give you a few names. I'm giving you a few names because just in case, oh my God, 5-6 days into the class, you still don't know my mail ID. Goodness me. All right, I'm sharing it for you, Nirupama. You can find my mail ID there. All right, so yeah, just in case I forget to mention these people in the next 1.5 hours, you may remind me that, sir, you had missed this guy. So I see Bradley There's one such fellow. I'm giving you the name of the work because you may go back to those works as and when you get time, if you want to, that is. All right, and then what do we have? Yep, Ernest Johns. Oh, what? Okay, just a second, guys. Let me just have a look at that name. I suppose it is. Yeah, Tragedy and the Mind of Infant. Oh, Tragedy and the Mind of the Infant. Hamlet and Oedipus. Isn't that the name of the work? Yes. Wilson, right. Wheels of Fire, Embassy of. Then, did I miss someone? All right. I think I have somewhat covered the people there. Then film adaptations. While Stevens. Nutshell. All right. So I have shared a list in the chat box. We'll definitely be optimistic. I hope that I'll be able to complete these things by 7:15, 7:20 something as usual. So let's hope that I'll be able to cover this much. And just in case I forget to do that, please let me know that I missed out somebody. I'll get back to you on that. All right. So now, finally, let's get started. And yesterday, I had given you two keywords like this, and you had missed it, or you had forgotten to remind me. Probably also because our class got over only by 7:40. My lecture stopped then, so I do understand that it's not a fault. But nonetheless, because you missed out, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes explaining two words: quarto and folio. I had introduced these two technical terms to you yesterday. So back then, there were quarto and folio editions. Quarto editions, as I told you, were not legitimate publications. There will be a group of people who would be paid to sit on plays, to watch plays, and to scribble down the script. They may sometimes even manage to get the dialogues from some actor by paying him something, and they would get that published. That need not be the original script. And they were clandestine, like we say in Malayalam, Vyaja CD, yeah, uh, the torrent version like. But nonetheless, quarto editions were not reliable, were not considered to be authentic, but still there were literary enthusiasts who purchased quarto editions to have a feel of what goes through a play. Meanwhile, folio editions were standard editions, and they were considered to be dependable. They were first-hand edited sources, so people depended on folio editions. Even today, we depend on folio editions for authenticity. And if at all you get to buy the book edited by Dr. Apu John, if you read my essay on Polonius, I have compared the three editions. There are two quarto editions on Hamlet, and there is a folio edition on Hamlet. So I have compared these three editions and brought out the differences between these three editions. So similarly, so apart from these authenticity part, one major thing that separates quarto and folio is its size. So what is a quarto? What is a folio? Say this is an A4 paper. I have an A4 paper at my hands. Yep. So A4 paper folded twice becomes a quarto. By that, I don't mean it's an 8-page book, but then this is the size of a quarto edition. It's as small as this. Whereas a folio edition, simply speaking, is an A4 paper folded once. This is also the normal book size. If you go to, say, for example, DC Books and order a book, you will get a book somewhat of this size. Yeah, an A4 paper folded twice. Sorry, folded once. A 4-page shape. So this is how a folio edition looks like. I think I had okay, I have a quarto here. I think I started a New Testament. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm sorry. I had Way of the World by William Congreve, but this is a Holy Bible. But nonetheless, this is the example of a quarto edition, just in case you wanted to have an idea. I don't know where I left the Way of the World. Maybe it's misplaced somewhere. All right. So that's something I wanted to convey to you because I missed it out yesterday. Okay. So getting started with today, if you may just go through the chat box, you may come across a few names. A.C. Bradley speaks about, A.C. Bradley and his book Shakespearean Tragedy. T.S. Eliot, Hamlet and his problems and the concept of objective correlative. Ernest Jones, sometimes you may also unknowingly add Sigmund Freud to that list. Hamlet and his, no, sorry, Tragedy and Mind of the Infant Hamlet and Oedipus. Wilson Knight, Wheels of Fire. Yeah, of course, Salman Rushdie. That's another name I missed out. Salman Rushdie and Yorick. We'll come back to that. Okay. So Ernest Jones, then Wilson Knight, Wheels of Fire, Embassy of Death, McKeown, and several film adaptations of Hamlet. We'll come to all that in a short while from now. So speaking about A.C. Bradley, let's get started with A.C. Bradley. The reason why we speak about A.C. Bradley is he attempted a character analysis of the 4 protagonists of the Bard. And needless to say, the character analysis would give deep insights into the 4 central protagonists of Shakespearean tragedies. I'll just share the screen with you and show you that book, just give you a glimpse of that book. And yep. And another thing is that it was actually not a book initially. It was lectures of A.C. Bradley, which was compiled into a book. Nonetheless, that still counts. I hope my screen is visible to you. You could see that that popular painting of Ophelia drowning in the river, a mad Ophelia drowning in the river. So this is Shakespearean Tragedy, available in bok.org for download. It is 510 pages small. So if at all you feel like reading the book, unless you have a decent command over the language, it's definitely going to be a bit difficult. But nonetheless, this is a book I'd recommend you to go through. The chapter on Hamlet isn't that long, mind you. And one benefit of downloading this book from BOK is that you get to read the introduction by John Russell Brown. He gives quite a good introduction to A.C. Bradley and the concept and how the Shakespearean tragedy characters or tragic characters have performed. And you may look at the content here. The reason why I'm sharing the content page is you could see that there is a different sort of a bifurcation. It's not that 4 chapters, but there are 10 chapters in this book. And the first 2 chapters in particular are about the essence of Shakespearean tragedies, the substance, construction, and how the tragic period functions in a play, and so on. The next 41 pages is what would interest you. That's his 4th lecture, which is extensively on Hamlet. And that's something that you may be interested in. There are also some contents that they have annotated about. These are discussions that you would be interested in. We started by that yesterday. What is the age of Hamlet? Discussed in page number 363. Then where was Hamlet at the time of his father's death? He was in Wittenberg. And events before the opening action in Hamlet. as I told you, the king was murdered and Hamlet was in his way back. Then blah blah blah. Then there are so many things. The player's speech in Hamlet, that is in the mousetrap, the play within the play, and so many things explained towards the fact. And in short, there are plenty of notes. These are all notes, mind you, not elaborations. These are notes by Dr. A.C. Bradley and the editors. And this introduction might be of some interest to you. He speaks about the significance of Bradley and how this book has become a Bible to Hamlet, or a real testimonial to read Hamlet, and how he looks at Aristotelian notions of drama, how he looks at Shakespeare, and what are his views on Shakespearean criticism, and plenty of things are covered in that preface. And yeah, let's quickly go to. I'm not going to read this for you. You may do that when you get your personal time and space. But I'm just going to show you a few pages so that you get the feel of criticism as done by Mr. Bradley. Yeah, the introduction also warns you that it's not a complete guide to Shakespeare. It's mainly about a character analysis. There are better books than A.C. Bradley's which you can depend on to have a better understanding of Shakespeare. For example, Harold Bloom's Understanding Shakespeare is one such book which will tell you uh, what sort of a playwright was Shakespeare. And that's one reason why this is considered to be a crucial one. The debate which Bradley conducted in his Shakespearean tragedy helped to fuel for other critics to come in and analyze Shakespeare and his works. And that in a way led to a bloom or a boom in what may be considered to be Shakespearean criticism. And this is A.C. Bradley's introduction. He gives us an overview on why he ventured out on a book like this. And if you look at page 108, which is of interest to us, I can just scroll it down a little bit. A little bit more perhaps. All right, so this is the lecture that you need to learn. And not learn, but it'll be good if you read this. This is a 40-page long chapter, in fact, a lecture. And he discusses in detail about Hamlet. And speaking about his character, attributes, procrastination, he raises some questions to get started with. What has Hamlet done? He has put an antique disposition and established a reputation for lunacy, with the result that his mother has become deeply anxious about him, and with the further result that the king, who was formerly at ease regarding him, that he wished him to stay in court, is now extremely uneasy and very desirous to discover the cause of his transformation. And he goes on to give a detail about Hamlet's character, what shaped it, and etc., etc., etc. And there is a scene by scene analysis. There is this dialogues being traced. Soliloquies are analyzed as well. Just in case you still have not written your assignment, you can cite quite a lot from A.C. Bradley's chapter. It may also help you regarding your annotations. And yeah, this is one word I forgot to tell you is, what does visitation mean? It's a rather interesting word. What does the word visitation mean? For example, now it may not happen because it's locked down and you're locked at your house. But generally, you may have guests. And when guests come to you, we use a phrase in English, to pay a visit. I paid a visit to my neighbor's place, or I paid a visit to my uncle's place. We pay a visit. So if a human being comes to visit you, that's called paying a visit. So what is visitation? Visitation means a ghost comes to visit you. That's not something that's quite common, and none of us desire for that. But nonetheless, Hamlet was fortunate or unfortunate to have a visitation from his father, his dead father, to be precise. So visitation is a word which means a ghost comes to meet somebody. So, yep, visitation and the presence of ghost is one of the central scenarios when it comes to Hamlet's case. And yeah, he mainly defines this procrastination and antique disposition that Hamlet has put forward. And this is something that I had told you yesterday. At the gravedigger's place, when he discovers Ophelia, he catches a fight with Laertes. He says, I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not, with all their quantity of love, make up my sum. My love is 40,000 times greater than the brothers' love for her. He tries to be so romantic, even when she is no more. And look at the certain things that he puts forward. How is it that in the first soliloquy he doesn't make any reference to Ophelia? How is it that in the second soliloquy, on the departure of Ghost, he says nothing about her? So there are certain references that you may use while writing your assignment. Again, about his mother's frailty. And there are footnotes, and Bradley goes in detail about certain concepts that he's used. So for those from non-literary background, that would be of immense help to you. This part is about Ophelia, and that's why I'm not going in detail about it. Generally, for your final exam, you may only get questions regarding Hamlet. There won't be questions, for example, like look at the play from a feministic point of view, or look at Gertrude's situation in the play, or analyze Ophelia's fall and suicide in the play. You will generally not get that question in IGNU. Maybe in another university you will get such questions, but in IGNU the questions would be plain and predictable. You will have questions like analyze the character of Hamlet, or for that sake, some just second, guys. All right, you have mailed me in between this class. Oh my goodness, I'll mail you the notes. Don't worry. Okay. Uh, yeah. So I was trying to tell you that, yeah, um, at IGNU, you may get plain, straightforward questions like analyze the character of Hamlet, or look whether you agree with T.S. Eliot that Hamlet lacks an objective correlative, or what do you think about the antique disposition that Hamlet has put on, and so on and on. So don't worry, that will be easier. But despite that, we are taking this broader theoretical stance so that you are able to appreciate and understand the concept better. Okay. So, yeah. So speaking about the play, something that A.C. Bradley tells as well. Uh, right from the beginning of the play, we can see that Hamlet is caught up in a conflict. In fact, there is another thing that we need to acknowledge. Hamlet is a Mona Lisa of literature. I think that's a statement I need to make before I speak about any of these theories. Hamlet is a Mona Lisa of literature. By that, I mean Mona Lisa is still studied and interpreted by various people. It's a mysterious portrait for the world. So is Hamlet. Still, there are so many critics discussing and debating on the various contexts happening in Hamlet. But nonetheless, there are certain inferences that we can have in a common manner. So to get started with, uh, it tells the story of Prince Hamlet, who is caught up in a conflict. And the conflict has two sides. It is internal as well as external. By internal, we mean there is a cause of nobility or refinement. And externally, there is coarseness or meanness. He has to take revenge by murdering his uncle. So throughout the play, there is this internal and external conflict happening within Hamlet. And like I told you, because he's a teenager, this is such a huge burden on him. We can see that in most of the places. We can see a frustrated, agonized Hamlet. There is a place where Hamlet says, there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. Before he meets the ghost, mind you, he says, there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. He also, when he dies towards the fag end of the play, one of the last words uttered by Hamlet is, in this harsh, harsh world. For such a tiny head like his, he cannot take this too much of complexities, betrayal, a lot of things. He cannot take it at a tiny age, and he says, in this harsh, harsh world. And another thing that we need to take care of is, again, we should read between the lines. There are places where, as Hamlet puts in an antique disposition, people speak about Hamlet, people praise him, including King Claudius, his own mother, or Polonius, or even Horatio, speaks admiringly about the Prince Hamlet before King Hamlet's demise. This one popular dialogue from Act 3, Scene 1 describes Hamlet as courtiers, scholars, soldiers, eye, tongue, sword. I hope you get to know what I mean. Courtiers, scholars, soldiers, eye, tongue, and sword. Who could have defined Hamlet like this? This happens in Act 3, Scene 1, for those who are keen on annotations. Act 3, Scene 1, someone admiringly speaks about the Hamlet before like this. It's none other than Ophelia, his lady love. Ophelia refers to Hamlet, who's now a changed man, who's now somebody who has changed a lot, somebody who has put in an antique disposition. Yeah. So Ophelia remarks about that Hamlet and says that he was once a courtier, scholar, soldiers, eye, tongue, sword. Again, we have to read it. It's in two parts. We have to combine that. Courtiers, eye, scholars, tongue, soldiers, sword. If I can again simplify it in Malayalam, എല്ലാവരുടെയും കണ്ണിൽ ഉണ്ണിയായിരുന്നു ഹാംലെറ്റ് രാജകുമാരൻ. He was most admired by everybody in the court before all these things happened. So once upon a time, he was everybody's beloved. He was a scholar. That's what we need to keep in mind, because he is also resembling the Renaissance age or Renaissance period. We have to bear in mind that he was a typical Renaissance scholar. Even though he was in Denmark, he was the Prince of Denmark, he had this pursuit for learning. He is a scholar from University of Wittenberg, which is one of the popular universities back then. So Hamlet was revered by everybody, admired by everyone. And his character is so admired. And he is committed to the ethics of learning. He relishes and relinquishes himself in learning. And for him, as I told you, his father was a hero. And again, we can see parallels in India too. Not then, but back then. I told you about Indira Gandhi. Think about what happened one fine morning. Her own security guard shoots her. And the very next day, Rajiv was forced to become the Prime Minister of India. Sanjay was notorious back then. So within a single day, or maybe he was dead back then, I'm sorry. He died in the plane aircraft accident. But nonetheless, within a day or two, Rajiv was rushed to become the new Prime Minister, which was initially quite evident in his mannerisms. And the moment he sees that everything has changed, courtroom has changed, his mother has changed, his uncle is ruling, he uses the phrase, change, so fast a change. Hamlet finds it quite difficult to come to terms with the sudden change that's happening around him. Change, so fast a change. He cannot take it. And in the first soliloquy, I told you that he says that his mother, he accuses her, frailty, thy name is woman. Often it's asked for annotation. Frailty, thy name is woman. And he accuses that Niobe of tears would cry for ages, at least to prove the society, and create a river in Greece. So that soliloquy begins by a statement, oh, this true, solid flesh would melt. Yeah. Again, I can only draw parallels in Malayalam. ഓ കേട്ടാൽ തന്നെ തൊലി ഉരിഞ്ഞു പോകുന്നു അല്ലെ. ഇതൊക്കെ എന്തൊരു നാണക്കേടാണ്. അച്ഛൻ മരിച്ചിട്ട് ഒരു മാസമായില്ല, കേട്ടാ തൊലി ഉരിഞ്ഞു പോകുന്നു. I feel so ashamed. Oh, this too solid flesh would melt. Yeah. I can't stand this. This lady, what has she done? What a shame is it? What a disgrace. But at the same time, we also have to think, as A.C. Bradley reminds, we have to be aware of the philosophical underpinnings in Hamlet, especially about the eternal, ephemeral nature of our life. We are all born, we live, we suffer, and we must all be aware that we should die someday. And no matter what all guises we put, whether we are proud or whether we have a sort of a, what do you call, at the end of the day, everybody is going to the same table. So there are certain lines that Hamlet utters that I'd like to share with you as well. A.C. Bradley has also mentioned this in that Shakespearean tragedy. And yeah, one more thing that I forgot to mention. If you take the 4 tragedies written by Shakespeare, Hamlet is the youngest protagonist in those 4 tragedies. So that also adds to the similarity. So nonetheless, there are places where high philosophy is employed by Hamlet. After killing Polonius, as they dine, as Claudius, Gertrude, and Hamlet sit for having dinner or supper, perhaps, he says to Claudius, one beggar may fish with a worm that has eaten a king, and the beggar may eat the fish. Look at the sort of scholar that Hamlet has in himself. Look at the deep philosophy attached to it. One beggar may fish with a worm that has eaten a king, and the beggar may eat the fish. I repeat, one beggar may fish with a worm. അല്ലെ, ചൂണ്ടയിൽ ഒരു പുഴുവിനെ കൊരുത്തിട്ട് ഒരു പിച്ചക്കാരൻ മീൻ പിടിക്കും. That has eaten a king. Yeah, maybe a king's body remains has been eaten by the fish, eaten by the pulu, eaten by the worm, and the beggar may eat the fish. So the beggar has the fish, which has the worm, which has eaten the king. Look at the sort of deep philosophy that Hamlet brings in, or Shakespeare brings in through Hamlet. That's the sort of scholar that he is. Also, in the same table, when Claudius asks, where is Polonius? Hamlet bluntly replies, not where he is, but where he is eaten. Yeah, eaten by the worms. And the scholarly nature of Hamlet matters, because if you look at any other characters, for instance, take the case of Macbeth. Macbeth is a soldier. He knows nothing except to wage in battles. But that's not the case with Hamlet. He is a scholar, an out and out scholar. And that's quite evident in his behavior. And there are areas where there is so much of sarcasm used by Shakespeare. There is a scene in which Horatio remarks, just like Hamlet says something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Horatio at one point says that you don't need a ghost to say that Denmark has become a hell. Everybody knows, everybody can see that. It's already evident. And Hamlet remarks about Claudius in another popular statement and again, generally this comes for annotation. Smiling, smiling villain. Smile, 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 and yet be a villain. Again, go back to that first scene where Hamlet comes to the court and Claudius says, "You are like my son, and this throne belongs to you once I die." And asks him, "Why are you sad? Why are you clothed in black?" So Hamlet says, "Smiling, smiling, smiling, and yet be a villain." Speaking about, again, disguise, the disposition that people can put. So, compared to such dispositions that people put in the play, has Hamlet really put in a disposition? It's a problematic question. It's up to you to answer. All right. I'll share the attendance link soon. I'm just trying to close AC Bradley's discussion. Then we'll share the link and we'll take a couple of minutes break and then I'll quickly rush through the other theorists. Yeah. Again, the vocabulary used by Hamlet. At one point of time, Hamlet is seen reading a book, and Polonius asks him, "What are you reading, my lord?" And Hamlet replies, "Words, words, and words." That's a sort of scholarly nature that he has. And at times, in an attempt to prove that he's mad, he calls Polonius a fishmonger. Hamlet says, Polonius says, "Do you recognize me?" And he replies, "Yeah, I do recognize you. You are a fishmonger, aren't you?" Remember that movie Kilukam, in which Jagadi asks him, "Do you remember me?" And she is like, "Enike manasilayi, Korangan." So somewhat like that, Hamlet tries to pretend that he is mad and he does certain things to prove that he is mad. So A.C. Bradley attempts a detailed character analysis on Hamlet, and he tries to explain for his dilemmas, his delays, especially the antic disposition and procrastination. Even when he speaks to Gertrude before murdering Polonius, he says, "I'll speak daggers and use none." Dagger means knife. So he says, "I'll prick you with my words, but I won't cut you with my sword." That much of anger that he has with his mother, he puts it into language. So I was just trying to be a little bit comprehensible. I was trying to make some sense because the moment I start speaking theory, because the theorists have done it in such a manner, you may find it a little bit, maybe a little bit boring. So that's why I was trying to take some time to get this started. As usual, we're still about to start. I'm going to share the link with you in the chat box. I've shared the link with you in the chat box. Amala, I'm here. Can't you see me? My camera is on and my audio is also working. So I have shared the link with you. Please mark the attendance. We'll continue in another couple of minutes and we'll discuss T.S. Eliot, Ian McEwan, Salman Rushdie, Wilson Knight in particular, and then wind up the day's session. Hello. I can see that an account titled MEG Mentors have joined the group. May I ask if it's someone from the regional center or is it someone who's in a clandestine manner? MEG Mentors IGNU, if you may please unmute yourself and talk. Hello. RC കൊച്ചിനിൽ നിന്ന് ആരെങ്കിലും ആണോ? ജലജ മാഡോ പ്രേമ മാഡം ആരെങ്കിലും ആണോ? MEG Mentors IGNU. MEG Mentors IGNU. ആസ് എ പോളിസി നമ്മളിവിടെ പേരിൽ കയറുന്നവരെ മാത്രമേ അക്സെപ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നുള്ളൂ. Unless you speak, I'll be forced to remove you from the room. MEG Mentors IGNU. First call, second call, removed. And once again, people, please help each other just in case somebody is unable to mark attendance.
Sir,
Yes, Sridevi.
sir, I was going through that IGNOU study material.
Uh-huh.
There I saw that that solid flesh. They have said that it is solid and not solid. So what is it like?
Uh,
What which version do we believe like?
I didn't get you. What is the problem there?
So, sir, the critical analysis part that is given in our book, IGNOU study material.
Uh-huh.
There, one critic has mentioned that it won't be solid flesh. It will be solid flesh. SULLIED, solid flesh.
Okay.
You said no one line.
Yeah, I
Solid.
understand. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
So what? Uh, so which one is the correct version? Like solid flesh or solid?
I don't think it should be solid flesh because uh, you know, look at the imagery that Hamlet tries to bring in. The solid
Yeah.
flesh would melt. So what would
Hmm.
melt? Something solid would melt, right? And something
Hmm.
that's dirty, if it melts, there is nothing good about it. I mean, nothing
Hmm.
significant about it. It is
Hmm.
when a pure, അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ മലയാളം അവിടെ പറഞ്ഞത്. ഓ എന്റെ തൊലി
അത്
ഉരിഞ്ഞു
മനസ്സിലായി
പോകും.
സർ.
Yeah.
മലയാളത്തിൽ നമുക്ക് ഇതാക്കാൻ പറ്റും, പക്ഷെ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ അവർ ക്രിറ്റിസിസം പറയുമ്പോൾ ദേ ആർ ലൈക്ക് ദേ ആർ സേയിങ് സോളിഡ് വരി തന്നെയല്ലാണ്. ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ബി സോളിഡ് ബിക്കോസ് ആ കണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിൽ അതാണ് ഫിറ്റ് ആവുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് അവർ
Yeah,
പറയുന്നത്.
but
ജസ്റ്റ്
then
ലൈക്ക് ഷേക്സ്പിയറിൻ പ്ലേയില് എയും യു അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല അവർക്ക് എലിസബത്തിൻ ഡ്രാമയില്,
yeah,
അതേമാതിരി പറയരുത്, അങ്ങനെ ആയിരിക്കും എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്.
yeah. But ഞാൻ ഇങ്ങനെയാണ് കേട്ടിരിക്കുന്നത് കേട്ടോ. I also refer to these paraphrased editions, and most of them, including the one I showed you yesterday, which I
ഓക്കെ.
had screen shared and showed you yesterday. All those paraphrased versions describe it like this: that our
ഓക്കെ, ഫൈൻ.
pure, skin would melt out of shape.
ഓക്കെ സർ.
All right. All right. So let's resume then. Hopefully, most of you have entered your attendance. Maybe there are a few still to do that. They'll do that. I hope I have shared the link again. I'll keep doing it in between. Let's continue from where we left. So,
Excuse me, sir. Can
yes,
I just
please.
ask a question? Um, Sir, when we're analyzing Hamlet, can we talk about the Oedipus complex also? Because
I'm,
he's
I'm, I'm coming to
finding.
that, Nirupama. Please be patient. I'm
Okay,
coming to that. That's our
okay,
next
okay,
part.
okay.
I'm coming to that. And
Fine.
maybe we can reserve the questions for the last 10 minutes as usual. I'll give you time. Don't
Okay,
worry. Yesterday it was an exception because I had to cover the story. I couldn't give so much of time for discussion. Today I'll try to give you at least 10 minutes. Don't worry. Okay. So, yeah. So, moving on from A.C. Bradley, another popular critic that you must remember is Wilson Knight. Wilson Knight and his book, the name of the book is Wheels of Fire. This is available, I hope, in BOK. You may also search for the essay Embassy of Death. It gives an entirely different version on, an entirely different rereading on Hamlet. So in the Embassy of Death, Wilson Knight claims that, unlike what I told you yesterday I told you that Hamlet highly has a respect for his father. His father was a reverend king. There were so many people who felt that he was a capable guy, whereas Claudius was not a capable fellow, and so on and on and on. Wilson Knight feels that it's actually the opposite. Wilson Knight feels that
Hello.
King.
Anand.
Ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
ഇങ്ങനെ ക്ലാസ് പോകുന്നു അല്ലേ?
നന്നായി പോകുന്നു മാം. മാം ആണോ ഇപ്പൊ കുറച്ചു മുമ്പ് ഒരു മെന്റേഴ്സ് എന്നുള്ളൊരു ഗ്രൂപ്പിൽ നിന്ന് കയറിയത്?
അല്ല
അല്ല അല്ല ഓക്കെ. കാരണം നമ്മളിവിടെ ഒന്നുമില്ല മാം, നമ്മളെ ഇവിടെ പേര് വെച്ച് കയറുന്നവരെ മാത്രമേ കേറ്റുന്നുള്ളൂ. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇടയ്ക്ക് 1-2 പേര് വന്ന് ഈ അബ്യൂസ് ഒക്കെ ചെയ്യുന്ന ട്രെൻഡ് ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പോ ഞാനിപ്പോ കുറച്ചു മുമ്പ് നോക്കിയപ്പോ മെന്റേഴ്സ് ഓഫ് ഇഗ്നോ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു ആരോ കയറി. അപ്പൊ ഞാൻ മിണ്ടാൻ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടൊന്നും മിണ്ടിയില്ല. അപ്പൊ ഞാൻ അങ്ങ് റിമൂവ് ചെയ്തു.
ശരി, അതാരാണോന്നോ നമുക്കറിയില്ല.
അറിയില്ല മാം. ഓക്കെ,
നമുക്ക് നമ്മളുടെ സ്റ്റുഡൻസ് മാത്രം കയറിയാൽ മതിയല്ലോ.
അതെ. So guys, we'll speak after 5 minutes. I think Prema ma'am wants to talk to you, and if you have any queries, you can ask her.
Have any query and doubt, you can ask now.
Guys, any non-academic administrative doubts, if you have any, you may ask with Prema ma'am.
There is one more paper is to be finished. That is MEG 4.
MEG 4.
MEG 4 will be starting next time. Mostly next week after finishing this. So that we will be finishing all the 4 courses by first week of June maximum. Mostly in May itself. Okay. Let us see. Any doubt regarding your re-registration? I think the re-registration portal has come. June 15th is the last date. I think I have put the voice message regarding re-registration. And you need not wait for the exam to be conducted. Re-registration you can do. Okay, any doubt regarding re-registration and exam?
Miss, I have one doubt. Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Miss, my name is Chanel. So I have one doubt. I am currently pursuing my MA in philosophy. I'm doing it in regular mode. So I'm in my final sum. So I'm not able to attend for. Actually, I won't be able to write this exam most probably at the first attempt. So for the second term, second year's re-registration, should I do it right now, sir?
That will be better. It is better for you to go in the main line itself. Otherwise, you will be 6 months lagged. Even if you don't write the examination, you can very well do the re-registration. So you will be along with your group.
Okay.
And if there is no harm if you do the re-registration for next session, January session. But my personal opinion is to go along with the same batch.
Okay, miss.
You're from which study center?
Cochinolli, RC Cochinolli, miss.
Cochinolli, yeah. Okay. I think no
Ma'am,
other doubt is there because
ma'am,
exam
any
in June or
possibility?
not, we don't know about the examination. Even Vice Chancellor doesn't know. That's a condition. Anyway, you prepare for the examination. So you will be informed 20 days earlier, the examination, prior to the examination. That is what VC told.
Okay, Miss. Okay.
Okay. Okay. You can, when the
Hello,
portal
ma'am.
is open, is the exam portal open? No, no, I think. Somebody was telling the examination portal has been opened. I don't know actually, but if it is open, you can do the registration for examination. Then regarding the this assignment also, you can give it as yes if you are submitting it before 30th.
Okay, Miss.
I think you can wait for some more days. But the RR you can do now itself.
Yes, Miss. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, tell me.
Ma'am, I'm a first year student, and
Yeah.
we got information on April 13 that our classes will start on May 1st. And
Uh, which one? Which one? Uh,
uh,
may,
ma'am,
yes, tell me.
we got the information on April 30 that our classes will start on May 1st, and we haven't received the earlier classes.
The
So
classes are going on now.
yeah, but the MEG one, MEG three.
MEG 1, we will finish one more classes there, I think. MEG 1, we have already almost completed. 2 is doing, and 3 is all completed, I think. Or day
One more
after
class is there for MEG3, one more class.
Pardon?
MEG3, one more class. Anita ma'am has to conduct one more class. That's what she
Anita
said.
man will finish next class, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh,
Then
excuse me.
the rest is only MEG 4. MEG 4 we will start mostly next week or so.
Okay, ma'am, but we haven't
Started
received any
next week
earlier
only.
classes.
Pardon?
We didn't receive any class before.
Miss, we hadn't
Yeah.
got the message for the MEG 1. Only MEG 2 and MEG. Regarding that, message came, but regarding MEG 1, there wasn't any message.
No, message has been sent from
We missed our classes.
I think messages are coming through.
yeah.
No,
We are
actually,
getting
Ma'am,
messages.
regarding
I think there's
MEG 1, we
one
didn't
or
get
two
Otherwise,
any
more
information,
classes
ma'am.
left.
otherwise anyway that link is kept put in the group. Somebody can put in the group, and others also can enter.
Ma'am, we have already missed 7 classes because we got only information about 3 classes, ma'am.
yes.
So already we have missed 7 classes. We
Maybe
didn't get any information regarding that, ma'am.
maybe the first 150 students will be informed. The others will get the recorded video. That may be the reason, because that is done from regional center only. Because only, I mean, Google Meet can accommodate only 100 people. A Google form was uploaded first, and you were supposed to fill up the Google forms also.
How can we
Okay,
get the recorded videos?
whenever you get the link, anybody can put the link in the group. That is the best thing, so that others also can use the link and enter the class.
Ma'am, how can we get the recorded videos?
Yeah, actually, they are working on it. By that time, lockdown started. That's a
7:30
problem. That is that RC is working on that. So
Okay.
sooner or later, you will be getting it. There won't be much delay. Actually,
Okay.
that will be on the
Okay.
website. On the website. Whenever I get the information, I'll pass it in the group itself. because when it is ready.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Hello. Good
Oh,
evening, ma'am.
hello. Yeah, good evening.
Ma'am, my name is Tanvi Mahajan. I'm from Punjab.
Yeah.
Ma'am, my regional center has not been conducted any classes. I have emailed them several times, but no one is responding.
Your regional center?
RC Khanna.
പക്ഷെ ആ കുട്ടിയുടെ റീജിയണൽ സെന്ററുകാർ ക്ലാസ് നടത്തുന്നില്ല എന്നാണ് ആ കുട്ടി പറയുന്നത്.
അതെ, അത് പക്ഷെ നമുക്കിപ്പോ ഒന്നും ചെയ്യാൻ നിവൃത്തിയില്ലല്ലോ. So we can't help it because this is done by our RC.
So
Actually,
my question was, ma'am, can I attend these classes from your RC?
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can.
Yeah, it will be on the website. If you visit the website, you will get the recorded videos once it is prepared.
Ma'am, how do we get a recording video?
It will take time because only after lockdown they will work on that. They have started working on that. I cannot say anything about other RCs. Only our RC or our study center I can say. Our study center is giving classes to all your courses, all the 4 courses. Now the pending is only MEG 4, which will be taken by Aishwarya, and she will start mostly next week. After finishing MEG 1, we will start MEG 4. And if it is like this on working days itself, that will be better for her also, so that you will be able to finish it soon. Within 2 weeks, we will be able to finish 10 classes. So your RC, you can approach your RC. I cannot say anything. If you want, you can attend the classes here, given from here. But you won't get any message from here because your name is not in the list here.
Excuse me, ma'am.
പ്രേമമസേ ഞാനിപ്പോ ഇവിടെ നമുക്ക് പാൻ ഇന്ത്യൻ ആയിട്ട് കുറെ കുട്ടികളുണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ ഞാൻ അവരോട് പറഞ്ഞത് അവരൊരു വാട്സാപ്പ് ഗ്രൂപ്പ് ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ ഇവിടെ വരുന്ന റെഗുലർ ആയിട്ട് 80 പിള്ളേരോളം വരുന്നുണ്ട് നമുക്കിപ്പോ ഈ 5-6 ക്ലാസ്സിലും. അപ്പൊ അവരൊരു വാട്സാപ്പ് ഗ്രൂപ്പ് ഉണ്ടാക്കിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. ആൻഡ് ദേ ഷെയർ വാട്ട് എവർ കമ്മ്യൂണിക്കേഷൻ ഇസ് ദേർ. അപ്പൊ ഐ തിങ്ക് ഷീൽ ബി ഗെറ്റിംഗ് ദി നോട്ടിഫിക്കേഷൻ ദേർ.
Excuse me, sir.
ആക്ച്വലി ഇപ്പൊ ഓഫ്ലൈൻ ആണെങ്കിൽ നമ്മളുടെ കുട്ടികൾക്ക് മാത്രമേ നമ്മൾ കൊടുക്കുള്ളൂ. ഇപ്പൊ ഇതിപ്പോ ഓൺലൈൻ ആക്കി.
Excuse me, sir. Sir. Hello. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Yeah, actually, I'm also like my center is in Pala, St. Thomas Pala, but I'm not getting any information regarding about the school, like online classes. Actually, I inquire this one with personal, someone connected with the phone.
It's not, what you are saying is not clear actually.
Actually, I'm in also a group, but I'm not getting any information regarding the classes. We have a group of
that is what I told. If some of you get the link, we can put in the group. Now, actually, link is once it is prepared, it is for 2 weeks actually.
Yeah, but
so
like
it is better because the messages are sent by regional sender. I am not sending. Formerly, I was sending when it was offline. It was sent from the study center. Now the whole pattern is changed by headquarters. It is done by the message is sent by regional center, and regional center may not send message to all, or you may not be able to get it. I don't know what actually. Anyway, that's you can do one thing. You get the link from the group. Somebody can put the link in the group so that you can enter.
Yes, ma'am. Like it was.
Prema, ma'am?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. There is a website called as megmendors.com where she can find all the information regarding all the lectures conducted by different RCs. So I can give her that website link so that she can check for the daily class updates. Not only our coaching RC, all different RCs are conducting courses simultaneously, so she can attend all those things if she is interested.
Yeah.
Excuse
Delhi
me,
is giving all
Sri
the
ma'am.
classes, I think. From Delhi, all the classes are
Yes,
given.
ma'am.
Yeah, if
Mm.
you're in a group, please do initiate to send the links
But
in a group
in
so that we
addition
can
to
also
that,
get
all
the
the
informations
RCs
about the
are also
classes.
giving. Okay. Okay. Okay, you continue with the classes then. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, please come back to Hamlet. I know it's a bit difficult. We had a 15-minute gap, intervention, interruption. Let's stick to the criticisms on Hamlet. So we were discussing
Excuse me,
Wilson
sir.
Knight. Oh my God, yes,
Excuse.
please.
Actually, I'm not from a Malayali, so I prefer you speak only English because in between we are using a Malayalam and it's very thoughtful for me to understand.
I must correct you by saying that I don't use Malayalam in general. I'm
Yeah,
sure
but
there were so
some
many people who
words
are
you can use.
sorry.
Some words which they can understand you use in between.
Yeah, because this is conducted by RC Cochin, which is in Kerala, and this is intended for the audience who are from Kerala, and those who are here, they have been requesting me right from the class one to be bilingual. But then I've not been bilingual because I understand that you're all PG learners of English. I do use English. And when I make Malayalam references, that's also because most of them cannot be translated into English. For example, yesterday I spoke about a reference from a Malayalam movie, Manichitrathal, where a character is, terrified by seeing a ghost. So that's a colloquial joke. I cannot translate it into English. So that's for people who are here because they are a Malayali. They are primarily our students under RC Cochin. So that's the only reason why I use Malayalam in between. And I believe that that's a comic relief for those poor fellows because generally they enroll in RC Cochin expecting to hear some Malayalam. In offline classes, we can do that as well. But because this is online and the sessions are being recorded, and also because of the commonsensical fact that you are postgraduate students in English, I stick to English. I can handle English pretty well. But then, yeah, it requires that certain things can be better explained in Malayalam because of the local examples. There are certain things which is better understood that way. For example, this solid flesh would melt. The better way is toli urinju poovum. That is, skin would rip off. That's a colloquial phrase. So that's something they would be able to understand. So there is no point in me continually saying the solid flesh would melt. So that's just a comic relief. No offense intended.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yep. All right. So let's continue. Let's not engage in further banters. We'll do that if we get that last 10 minutes. I'm not sure because we have so many things to discuss. Okay. Speaking about Wilson Knight, we were discussing Wilson Knight, Embassy of Death. In that essay, if you go Google, you will get an essay. In that essay, Wilson Knight presents an entirely different perspective about Hamlet's father, as well as Claudius. Wilson Knight claims that actually Claudius is a capable fellow and King Hamlet was a fragile person. Wilson Knight argues that King Hamlet was incapable, was a terrible ruler. Moreover, he was also a drunkard. And because he was a drunkard, he also has a sort of a sexual inactivity, which so many other critics have pointed out as well. Remember that if Hamlet is 20-year-old, for instance, we must note that he is the only son of King Hamlet and Gertrude, which also technically points out to probably a sexual inactivity between the king and the queen, or the incapability of the king or the queen to give birth to another child. So Hamlet is all the only child of theirs. So Wilson Knight speaks that this is also because of the king's excessive drinking. He's a compulsive alcoholic, and that leads to him being a semi-impotent fellow. So seeing all this, Claudius does this for the sake of country. that is for Denmark. Claudius murders King Hamlet, thereby, thereby becoming the ruler of Denmark. He is a capable ruler, and Gertrude also is comfortable with a masculine form of Claudius than a drunkard form of King Hamlet. And that attributes for what happens in the play. And Wilson Knight says that the play and the character Claudius is often being misinterpreted. And at this point of time, I'd like to quickly jump to Salman Rushdie's Yorick 2. Because Salman Rushdie's Yorick is a short story which is set in the childhood of Hamlet. And as I've told you, in the play Hamlet, Yorick is not a character. Yorick is only passively mentioned in the gravedigger scene, where there is this reference to whose skull this is. And Yorick was the clown, the jester in the court of King Hamlet, who had a major role in bringing up Prince Hamlet. So Rushdie ventures out on an entire short story on Yorick and Hamlet's childhood. In that short story, Rushdie portrays King Hamlet as a cruel, sadistic kind of a person. And he says that Hamlet had a sort of a terrible childhood, to such an extent that the young Hamlet, the schoolboy kind of Hamlet, chances upon the sexual activity between his mother and his father, which is in a way brutal. And these tremors continues to stay with Hamlet as he grows up. This is what Rushdie says. I don't want to spoil the fun, so you may go back and refer to the story as and when you get time. Or if you buy Dr. Apu's book, there is an essay on Yorick by Salman Rushdie, so you may read that as well. So, yep. Then moving on to T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot, in his work Hamlet and His Problems, T.S. Eliot is a modernist poet come workshop critic. He is popular for his poem called The Wasteland. You have it in MEG 1, a 403 lines long poem. And he was a modernist poet. And in his essay, Hamlet and His Problems, he accuses that the play Hamlet by William Shakespeare is an artistic failure. And when you ponder why it is an artistic failure, T.S. Eliot makes use of this term, and he says that Hamlet lacks what may be called as an objective correlative. Objective correlative is quite a confusing term, especially for people who are from a non-literary background. Again, because there are various sorts of interpretation that comes with objective correlative. But nonetheless, to keep it simple, the traditional definition goes like this. It is a set of objects, a situation, a chain of events, which shall be the formula of that particular emotion, the dormant emotion that binds the entire play. I repeat, a set of objects, a situation, a chain of events that shall uphold a particular emotion that binds the entire play together. And T.S. Eliot claims that Hamlet is an artistic failure because it lacks an objective correlative, which is a dormant emotion. There are so many critics and philosophers who stand by this. There are people who say that Hamlet is an artistic failure. But I've also heard people who try to ignore Eliot and say that Eliot was simply taking a traditional rigid stance. Hamlet is much beyond such unifications. His procrastination in itself is a rear view mirror of our day-to-day dull routine life and our choicelessness and dilemmas. But then there is another interesting observation that I have come across, which I'd like to share with you. I hope you have got the concept now. When I say objective correlative, it is one particular emotion or a set of objects that unifies the entire play in its mode. Malayalathi parayanengil, I'm repeating the same, all right? I'm telling in Malayalam what I said in English now. Malayalathi parayanengil, നമ്മളുടെ ഒരു നാടകത്തിലെ മൊത്തമായി കൂട്ടിക്കൊണ്ടു പോകുന്ന ഒരു ഡോർമെന്റ് ഇമോഷൻ. സപ്പോസ് ഇപ്പൊ ഹാംലെറ്റിന് പ്രൊക്രാസ്റ്റിനേഷൻ ഇല്ലായിരുന്നു എന്ന് വിചാരിക്കുക. അപ്പൊ പ്രതികാരം ഒരു ഡോർമെന്റ് ഇമോഷനാണ്. പ്രതികാരം എന്നതിൽ ഊന്നിയുള്ള ഒരു നാടകമാണ് ഹാംലെറ്റ്. അപ്പൊ അതിന് ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ് കോറിലേറ്റീവ് ഉണ്ടെന്ന് വാദിക്കാം. ബട്ട് ബിക്കോസ് ഹാംലെറ്റ് പ്രൊക്രാസ്റ്റിനേറ്റ്സ്, we cannot take revenge to be a motive that is binding the play, because the play is delayed insignificantly because of this indecision of Hamlet. So there are so many critics who've said that Hamlet lacks an objective correlative supporting T.S. Eliot. But then I was fortunate to come across a lecture by Dr. Madhukar Rao. I had given you the name of his book in the first class, Literary Salad, which is a glossary, a wonderful glossary if you want to buy that. So Dr. Madhukar Rao sir once put it into a different perspective. He says that the play has an objective correlative actually. But the problem why we are unable to recognize that is because we read the play in a chronological manner. Like I told you, we read from Act 1, Scene 1, where the guards are frightened by the sight of the ghost. And Dr. Madhukar Rao says that if you read the play from the gravedigger scene, that is the gravedigger scene where Hamlet meets the gravediggers along with Horatio, and he looks at the Yorick skull and reflects on the ephemerality of our day-to-day life. Again, അതിനെ മലയാളത്തിൽ സിംപ്ലിഫൈ ചെയ്ത് പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെയൊക്കെ ജീവിതത്തിന്റെ നിരർത്ഥകത. There is no meaning to our life. We are all born. Death is a reality that we should succumb to, and we live and we suffer. This is the philosophy that is there throughout that play. And this is quite evident in the gravedigger scene, where Hamlet reflects by looking at the skull of Yorick. So Dr. Rao says that if you reread the play from the gravedigger scene, you could feel that there is definitely an objective correlative in the play. And that objective correlative is this ephemerality of or temporality of human life, or death as inevitable. The play also deals with death, mind you. There are almost 13 deaths in the play. Not a single character is spared. Yeah. So Dr. Madhukar Rao speaks logically in that regard, and he says that this is how you can contest T.S. Eliot. There are times when the question is asked as a question. Hamlet lacks an objective correlative, and hence it is an artistic failure. Do you agree with the statement? So it's up to you. You may write an essay saying that Hamlet lacks an objective correlative. Eliot says so, and he's wrong in that, and blah blah blah. Or you may take it from the gravedigger scene and explain that he does actually have an objective correlative, or the play actually has an objective correlative. That's up to you. Okay. Moving on to the next critic. That's another crucial discussion in as far as Hamlet is concerned. There is this discussion where more often than not, critics have identified that there was an incestual or Oedipal relationship between Hamlet and his mother. As you all know, Oedipus complex is a coinage of Sir Sigmund Freud, again relying on the Greek myth of Oedipus. And he says that Hamlet has an attraction towards his mother, and because his father is no more, Hamlet has the deeper instinct towards his mother. This is actually often people confuse it with Sigmund Freud, because Freud created the term Oedipus complex, but it was another critic who accused Hamlet of having Oedipus complex, though coincidentally that critic was also the friend of Sir Sigmund Freud. The name of the critic is Ernest Johns, and the name of the work is Tragedy and the Mind of the Infant, from the book Hamlet and Oedipus. Again, available in BOK, I suppose. If you want to go back and download and read that, feel free to do that. He gives you so many evidences, and he tries to rationally argue that Hamlet has a phallic interest towards his mother. Well, I personally don't subscribe to the Freudian stupidity, and I always have problems with most of his misogynistic and chauvinistic observations. There are plenty of theories of Freud which I believe are substandard and biased. Just in case you don't know about his stupid theories, there are a couple I would like to share with you. One is, he says that people who resort to cigarette smoking are those who would have had premature feeding in their childhood. Especially if they had stopped breastfeeding in 3 to 4 months, they resort to smoking when they grow up. That is, according to Freud, people smoke, especially men smoke, because when they smoke, they feel the Oedipal urge of sucking their mother's nipples, which I have found to be one of the most absurd things to have heard ever in my life. Similarly, he makes analogy with what is around us, and he tries to logically argue that if there is a hole, there is a penis for that, and that's natural. He brings in the analogy of lock and the keyhole. He says the keyhole is there because it pre anticipates a key. So he says that there is a vagina because it pre anticipates a penis or a dick to be abusive. And I have strong discontent towards such theories, especially in the modern era where we discuss the LGBTQ theories and their existence. This is as stupid and absurd as it can ever get. So, on the Oedipal part, it's not Freud, but it's Ernest Jones who has put forward the theory that Hamlet had an Oedipal urge towards Gertrude. There are a few articles that I'd share with you tonight. You may refer to those articles. You may have a better idea about these things. For example, there is an essay by Carolyn Hilburn about the character of Hamlet's mother, which indeed is Gertrude. So I hope that will give you some idea. Also, there is this, where is that? There is also another essay on, just a second. I think I misplaced it somewhere. There's an essay title on Frost's concepts. Okay, I'll share that with you anyway. There are also discussions on antique disposition. There is also an essay that you should read. I'll share it with you. It was written by Robert Reed. The essay is titled Hamlet, the Pseudo Procrastinator. So these are things that will come to your mail inbox in another half an hour or so. Don't worry. So yeah, so that's about Ernest Jones and accusations of Hamlet being Oedipal. Then speaking about Ian McEwan, that's another thing that I need to add to whatever we have discussed. Ian McEwan wrote a novel a decade ago, and that novel was titled Nutshell, Nutshell. It's actually a modern narration of Hamlet. The only difference is that Gertrude and Claudius are planning the assassination of King Hamlet. And eventually they do assassinate or murder King Hamlet. Prince Hamlet gets to know about all this conspiracy by being in Gertrude's womb. ഗർഭപാത്രത്തിൽ ഇരുന്നു കൊണ്ട് തൻ്റെ അച്ഛനെ കൊല്ലാനുള്ള മാമന്റെയും അമ്മയുടെയും കോൺസ്പിറസി കേൾക്കുന്ന പ്രിൻസ് ഹാംലെറ്റിന്റെ കഥ പറയുന്ന നട്ട്ഷെൽ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന നോവൽ. And I'm sure you would have all gotten reminded of Abhimanyu's tale as you heard the story. And Nutshell, in that sense, gives you an interesting prospect. So you may go back and read Nutshell if you can, or read the Nutshell of Nutshell by resorting to some summary sites. Yeah, that will also help you understand Hamlet better. And did I miss out something? Yeah, film adaptations. Oh, before moving on to film adaptations, because Abhimanyu has come twice in our discussions this week, I'd like to share a small digressive story about Abhimanyu. I'm sure most of you would not have heard about this. You're all familiar with Abhimanyu's story. Abhimanyu, the son of Arjuna, who heard the story of Chakravyuha from the womb of Subhadra, and at a critical juncture of the Kurukshetra war, Abhimanyu is forced to go to war to break Chakravyuha. So Abhimanyu goes in because he has only heard only that part. He doesn't know the way to get back. It's like listening to my lectures and trying to become a literary or a theater person. Unless you go back to the resources that I refer to you, you're all becoming Abhimanyus. You know bits and pieces that I've told you, but you have not gone into detail. So when a test of your knowledge comes, you may be under problem. So please go back to those texts. Don't die Abhimanyu's death. Nonetheless, Abhimanyu goes into the Chakravyuha and he sees that he's been trapped. He can see a huge round of army coming against him. Alarikondu vaalum pidichukondu. There are people coming to stab him, to kill him. He's a young boy like Hamlet, mind you, a teenager. Amidst that group of people who are rushing to kill him, Abhimanyu sees a man who's smiling. And in a war front or at a war front, if somebody is smiling at you, the rule goes that he cannot be your enemy unless it's Claudius, you see, smiling and yet be a villain. Yeah. So Abhimanyu tries to find a way out. So he asks this guy, you are smiling, which means you are not my enemy. Do you know how to break Chakravyuha? Can you help me? And this guy, who smiles at Abhimanyu, tells him that, son, I know how to break Chakravyuha, and I feel like I should help you too, but I can't help you. I repeat, the guy who smiles at Abhimanyu says that even though I'm at the enemy's side, I have my sympathies for you, my son. He calls him son, and he says, even though I wish to get you out of Chakravyuha, I cannot. I'll tell you why, but any guesses as to who this guy is? That's an epic reversal of fortunes, if you get to know the name of the person. Just in case you don't know who he is, you can't listen to the name without being surprised. Who could that guy be? A smiling man in the Kurukshetra side.
Krishna?
No. Oh, come on. How is Krishna from there? No. No.
So no clues.
This guy who smiles at Abhimanyu, in fact, was as good as or as better than Abhimanyu's father.
Karna.
That's true. No. 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 Karna can't talent.
Duryodhan.
No. Every year, when you wish Teachers' Day, I end up saying,
Dronacharya.
No, don't wish Teachers' Day because we have the highest award on that guy's name. He's not a good replica of how a teacher should be. He's a biased idiot. He looks at caste politics and divides students on favoritism. How can Dronacharya be an ideal teacher? The smiling guy who cannot help Abhimanyu, his name is Ekalavya. If you see the irony. Ekalavya, whose thumb was taken by Dronacharya. I know how to break the Chakravyuha, but I can't, my son. Don't have thumbs. My thumbs were taken for your father. Historical tale. Just in case you want to go back to Mahabharata, go read this tale. This is there somewhere, though a little bit subdued. An ironic reversal. So speaking about Dronacharya, he's never an ideal teacher. Let me tell you. Any biased teacher should never be respected. It is really our responsibility to be, just to all of you, irrespective of your name, caste, nationality, space from where you are in. For me, you're all equals. It's not like I could have an affinity towards someone and not to somebody. I'll mail notes to a couple and not to others. I don't think that that person deems to be called a good teacher. Okay, let's get back to Hamlet. So speaking about Hamlet, the last part of that, I'll keep it very short. Hamlet has been adapted ever since. There are plenty of adaptations on Hamlet. You may go to Google and you would come across plays like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. There is this play by Edward Bond called Lear about King Lear's Hamlet. Shakespeare's King Lear. So Shakespeare has often been adapted into various forms. And Hamlet has also been adapted into various movie forms in various cultures, various countries, including Japan. And in Malayalam also, there was a movie called, what was the name of that movie? V.K. Prakash, Indrajit. Just a second, let me just Google that. Hamlet in Malayalam. I just forgot the name. Nitya Menon Kabinicha Apadam. It was a flop. Karma Yogi in the year 2012, directed by V.K. Prakash. Though that movie has a lot of blemishes. Polonius is killed by Claudius in that movie. So adaptations always have its own features. So don't go by adaptations. but Karma Yogi was the vernacular adaptation of Hamlet. Okay. Similarly, one of the best adaptations I've ever seen of Hamlet is the Hindi movie Haider by Vishal Bharadwaj, starring Shahid Kapoor. Just in case you haven't seen that movie yet, go grab it from somewhere and watch the movie. Though I would say that Hamlet is not exactly, Haider is not exactly Hamlet. It is more of a retelling in a Kashmiri backdrop. It's actually Kashmir, the political unrest in Kashmir. So I won't say that Hamlet is Haider or Haider is Hamlet, but then it's still a wonderful watch. If you watch Haider, you would definitely have all the essence of Hamlet in it. And it also gives a lot of scope to interpret these adaptations of Hamlet. And remember, yesterday I had shared you a link where the Hamlet was performed at the Globe Theatre a year ago. I had shared that link. Watch that link as and when you get time. It's a good adaptation. Again, it's an adaptation. Keep that in mind. So I think I'll sum this up right here. I don't want to elongate this much. We have 7 minutes if you have any queries. Maybe because it's Eid, we have only close to 70 people today. Yesterday we had a full house, 100 people in the session. So hopefully they'll come back. Before I open the floor for questions, I'd like to remind you that we don't have class tomorrow and the day after. Maybe because they felt the Eid would happen tomorrow and the day after. So as per the schedule, we don't have class tomorrow and the day after. We'll resume the Sunday from 5:30 to 7:30, and we'll have classes till the 20th. So within the limited time, I'll try to cover as many plays as I can. Again, I can't promise that I'll teach all the 10 plays, maybe another 4. I'm not sure. We'll see how far it takes. Of course, a play would take only a session. I won't take 4 sessions or 4 hours for a play.
So, are we supposed to know about the adaptations and the criticism of Hamlet?
As a literature student, yes. From an examination point of view, no. You won't be asked about adaptations of Hamlet for your exam. But yes, if you go for an interview after 2 years of a literature course, these days we speak about the adaptations and modernities of Hamlet. For example, if you go Google the MA English syllabus of MG University, Mahatma Gandhi University, which comes under Kottayam, Ernakulam, and so on, you may see an entire paper in the 4th semester titled Shakespeare Across Cultures. And that paper, Shakespeare Across Cultures, deals in detail the modern adaptations of Shakespearean plays and even modern interpretations of Shakespeare, including those by Stephen Greenblatt, Harold Bloom, and so on. So if you want to be a teacher and if you are planning to go for an interview after cracking NET, they may definitely ask you about this. Even for NET exam, they ask you who starred in this adaptation of Hamlet or who directed this movie, blah, blah, blah. So you ought to expect such questions for your NET exams as well. So it's good if you get to know this. And this is not difficult to get to know. You simply need to go to Google and type adaptations of Hamlet. You will get a plenty of them.
So was Shakespeare inspired by the earlier Hamlet or Hamlet? Is it very close to the adaptation?
Yeah, that's how the saying goes. We are told by most of the critics that Shakespeare wrote Hamlet from the Hamlet legend. And an immediate inspiration might have been Thomas Kit's Spanish tragedy, which also has a similar plot. So they say Shakespeare worked on that. And regarding the name, there are also some critics who says that Shakespeare had a son whose name was Hamnet, Hamnet. He died very young, and that too recently before he wrote Hamlet. So there are critics who say that Shakespeare had some affectations for his son, and that also led to the title. And another fun fact for you, in the performance of Hamlet, I told you Richard Barbage played the character of Hamlet. And the role of King Hamlet, that is the role of Ghost in the play, was enacted by none other than William Shakespeare himself. So the saying goes that it was Shakespeare who enacted the role of King Hamlet.
Thank you.
Yep. So if you have any more questions, we still have, say, 3 more minutes.
Sir, I'm getting an idea. Like, can I share it, sir?
Yeah, please. This is a discursive space.
Yeah, sir. If we check Chanakya's political background, there was a
Mhm.
king called Dhananand. Okay, he was a
Yeah.
fisherman, and he
Mhm.
gets into a clandestine affair with Queen Avantika. Okay, and they
Yeah.
have 13 children, and finally they just like Hamlet's mother and his uncle, they
Mhm.
plan to kill the king, and then he gets thrown. Okay,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
later he uh, later uh, later he I think later he abuses Chanakya in his court, and that is why he has to find somebody like Chandragupta Maurya. Okay, so if we look by that story, what if Hamlet is Claudius' son itself? Why? Because he's saying, "Whom are you mourning for, son? You are the king after
Oh
me."
my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! I forgot that. Thank you so much for reminding me that.
Yeah,
Okay, I didn't want to spoil that suspense. That's why. In Yorick, that's the argument that Salman Rushdie is making. In Yorick,
okay,
Salman
okay,
Rushdie says that Hamlet
okay.
could perhaps be the son of Claudius himself. And that's
Yes,
why, despite knowing that Hamlet is trying to take revenge by murdering Claudius, until a
yeah,
certain point, Claudius does not abandon Hamlet. He tries to
yeah.
bear with Hamlet.
Yeah, smiling, smiling, smiling. That is why I just thought of the story. It came to my mind, like I
Yeah.
correlated both the stories, and I just came up with this argument. Why?
Yeah.
Because
And
he's, and finally we have seen in politics it is fair. If somebody is trying to kill you, it is all survival instinct, and you have to protect yourself.
yeah.
Because I am from political science background, maybe I have read so many things in that way. So
Mhm.
my brain is working this way. So I thought so. It could be possible, sir,
No,
because
you are right. You are right.
he
And
his
I
mind is
can
happy.
give you another evidence from my side. I can give you another evidence from my side. Maybe also because you guys fail to read between the lines when I lecture. Yesterday, I had told you that speaking about Hamlet's age, there is a reference that Shakespeare makes in the gravedigger scene. When Hamlet meets the gravediggers and speaks about the Yorick skull, the gravediggers remark that, say, 31 years ago, when King Hamlet returned from the war, Prince Hamlet was born. Somewhere, yeah, I agree that it's a bit naughty to say that as a teacher, but maybe you missed a pun there. The king has been to a war for a long time, and when he returns, King Hamlet is born. Sorry, Prince Hamlet is born. So that can also be used as an evidence to state that the clandestine affair between Claudius and Gertrude had begun back then. The king went to war, they were making out in the royal chamber, and by the time the king returns, the prince is born. And we must note that Gertrude has not delivered a single baby after Hamlet. So it also means
Exactly.
that, yeah, there was sexual inactivity or impotency in terms of King Hamlet. And even Prince Hamlet was, in fact, Claudius' son. Possible, quite possible. There are definitely
But why?
referring to it.
But why so much of love for an absent father or an very sadistic father, sir? I mean, Hamlet, like he really loves his father so much that he gets into depression, he feigns madness. I mean, all this for an absent father.
That's
It
why I
is.
keep repeating it's not only about the paternal thing. You look at the condition. The moment he starts from Wittenberg, if we take these theories and examine it again, his dad is no more. And given that he's got an Oedipal urge, he expects his mother to resort to him. It's like him and his mother only zone that gets destroyed or shattered. His dad is dead, and for him, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, let me just drink a bit of water, just a second. Yeah, so we are told that for him, his dad is, a sort of a reverential figure. So his dad is no more. He comes to know that he was murdered by his uncle. His Oedipal urge is thwarted by his uncle and his mother has married his uncle, thereby denying him the legitimate throne. So it's also about power. It's power, sexuality, relationships, emotionality, blah, 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 blah. So it's all combined together. It's not that we are speaking only about one single aspect.
So when we
All right.
write answer